It was an exciting day in Town City. John Ernest, Town City's premier news anchor, had just reported on the evening news the night before. Scientists at the University of Town City have discovered an unusual square-shaped object in the Bahia Sea, just off the coast of Town City. They believe that this object could be part of the lost civilization Chiospóli. If true, this will be the biggest discovery to come out of Town City since Rufus the Runch's treasure. Here at TC News Service, we will keep you updated on this incredible story as new information is released. This is John Ernest for TC News Service signing out. This report and the discovery itself caused an enormous amount of talk, not just with the general public but with experts as well, including Skallow and Joe and friends' old acquaintance, Dr. Alexandra Atlas, who have been requested to join the investigation as the representative for Town City's History Museum. Dr. Atlas also had a request of her own. She wanted those who rescued Rufus the Runch's treasure to join too, that being Skallow, Joe, Major Thomson and the Bodyguard, and of course Robo. A couple of days following this discovery and report, Major was at his desk studying for his degree in criminology, a degree he had recently started since becoming fascinated with law enforcement, following his involvement with the Rufus case and after proving his brother, the Bodyguard's innocence. He unexpectedly received a phone call. Seeing it was from Dr. Atlas, answered it. "Hello, Major Nick," began Dr. Atlas. "Likewise," returned Major Nick. "Haven't heard from you in a while. How have you been? Anything I can do for you?" "I've been great, Nick. Thanks you for asking. I called to ask you, your brothers and your friends, Skallow and Joe, plus Robo of course, to come to Town City's History Museum, as I have some news relating to the recent discovery made to give to you all. I would like you, your brothers and friends to come this afternoon if possible so I can give it to you sooner rather than later," explained Dr. Atlas. "Interesting," replied Major Nick. "I'll check with the others first and call to confirm when I'm sure. See you then. Talk to you then," ended Dr. Atlas. Major Nick immediately rushed downstairs and echoed to Thomson and the Bodyguard all that Dr. Atlas had told him, after which the three informed both Skallow and Joe too. And Skallow filled Robo in on this as well. Of all six, including Robo not having anything on that afternoon, they decided to meet Dr. Atlas and see what she wanted to tell them. After confirming with Atlas, they set off for the museum. Arriving, they went straight to Dr. Atlas's office. There they were greeted by Atlas. "Afternoon, Skallow, Joe, Nick, Thomson and Boris, and of course Robo too," Atlas said as they entered her office. "Afternoon, Atlas," replied Major Nick. "Who are your friends?" Dr. Atlas then introduced the six to her associates. "This is archaeologist Dr. Mordecai Walton, who specializes in underwater archaeology, and is one of the leaders of this investigation. This here is Dr. Lawrence Henry, head of the research team at the University of Town City that made the discovery. He is leading this expedition with Dr. Walton. This is Chase Rivers, a professional and highly experienced scuba diver, who's worked with the military." "Investigation?" questioned Skallow. "What investigation?" Dr. Henry answered Skallow's query. "Me and my team showed our findings, the reports, photographs and video footage from said object we cited, to Dr. Walton and his collaborators. After studying them for himself, he returned and agreed this could be part of the lost civilization Chiospóli. Dr. Walton then joined the conversation, adding, "After echoing the results of Henry's team, me and Dr. Henry decided to analyze this further. Following the acquisition of the necessary funds from the university and government, we were able to proceed further with our studies. After this, Town City's History Museum became involved, with them selecting their senior curator and director, Dr. Alexandra Atlas, chosen due to her immense and extensive knowledge of this city's history. Mr. Chase Rivers, a now retired Navy diver who worked extensively with the SEALs and the Marines during his 20-plus year career, volunteered to join our mission after seeing Ernest's report, believing he had the skills and experience useful and necessary for this expedition. Subsequently, with the government's approval, he was officially added to our ranks." Dr. Walton and Dr. Henry explained the situation cleared up all things, except one. What was Skallow and Joe and friends' involvement in this mission? Leading Joe to ask, "That explains who everyone is and their role in this mission, but it doesn't explain why we're here. Why have you called us, Dr. Atlas?" "Let me explain," began Dr. Atlas. "It's quite simple. When I joined this expedition, I inquired if you and your friends would be able to participate, following your assistance with recovering Rufus's treasure, and many other deeds that I've heard about. Subsequently, my proposal was approved, and here we are." Following Atlas's explanation, Skallow, Joe, and friends went to meet their comrades, and after exchanging pleasantries, each went their separate ways for that day, and would reunite the next day to begin to uncover what secrets this object contained. The next day they regrouped, this time at the University of Town City in the research centre where the original discovery was made. Dr. Henry placed on the enormous white table in the centre of the room all the reports and photographs that his team and himself had collected regarding the find. Dr. Walton had brought all books and documents from his personal collection discussing the history of Chiospóli. Dr. Atlas did the same, but also included resources from the museum too, both placing them alongside Dr. Henry's. All three doctors began to analyse, decipher, and discuss the books, documents, and photographs before them, as the Six and Chase Rivers did their best to keep up. When the three had finished, they translated their conclusions into simpler terms for the rest. Dr. Atlas began to explain what they uncovered. "I can see that you have little idea as to what we've been talking about. I'll explain it as simply as I can. We used this map of what we believe Town City looked like while Chiospóli was above ground, with me and Dr. Henry cross-referencing this with a map of Town City today, with the location in question marked clearly in red ink. What we are trying to do is to confirm that this object and Chiospóli are in the same place, concluding it's the lost civilization. Throughout this, Dr. Walton was affirming each conclusion as they came, along with us too, using the other resources available." "What's the conclusion you have come to?" asked Thomson. "Is it the lost city of Chiospóli or not?" "As far as we can tell, it is," confirmed Dr. Atlas. "However," she added, "we can't be sure until we investigate the site itself." "Now that's where I come in," interrupted Chase Rivers as he jumped into the conversation. "I'm in charge of the practical side of this investigation. Skipper Bill, my old Navy buddy from back in the day, and his crew are willing to take us on his ship, the MS Vigil, an old retired Navy patrol ship. He's just waiting for the go-ahead." Following Rivers and the Professor's explanation, after finalising some major details, it was decided to clock out for the day and return the next day at Shore Cove docks. The next day, all involved in the Chiospóli expedition, Skallow and Joe and friends, Dr. Atlas, Henry and Walton, and Chase Rivers arrived at Shore Cove docks. On arrival, they were met by the media, who had come to interview the participants of the expedition, as the public, not just in Town City, but throughout the nation and across the world, had become fascinated with the discovery since it was first broadcast by John Ernest 2 weeks ago. Like before, John Ernest led the report and interviews with those of interest, interviewing each as they boarded the ship, including Skallow, Joe, Major Nick, Thomson and the Bodyguard, updating the public on the developments made during the past weeks. Dr. Henry informed Ernest that, as far as we can tell, this could likely be Chiospóli. Nevertheless, we cannot be sure until we investigate it on site. Dr. Atlas and Dr. Walton added to Dr. Henry's comments. Chase Rivers was also asked to comment. "What are your thoughts on the experts' findings? And what have you and your team done to prepare for this trip?" investigated John Ernest. Chase Rivers responded, "Like you say, they're experts, so I expect my team, the 5 young lads Atlas recruited, and I will return with some rare artifacts for the museum, or at least be the first to sight Chiospóli since its disappearance. To prepare, I've been training the 5 for the past week in the conditions that the 3 doctors believe we will encounter, plus all the usual safety protocol required." When finished, they all boarded the ship. When boarded, Chase Rivers introduced him to his old friend and captain of the ship, Skipper Bill. When Skipper Bill had been introduced to all the members of the expedition, he introduced him to the members of his crew and to his second-in-command, First Mate Jim. Following the introductions, Chase Rivers, the doctors, Skallow and Joe and friends went down with Skipper Bill and First Mate Jim to the captain's quarters to explain the mission at hand. The 3 doctors laid out all the details, and after looking it over and listening to Atlas, Henry and Walton's speeches, Skipper Bill and First Mate Jim said, "I really hope this is Chiospóli. If it is, this will be one of the biggest things to happen to Town City. But there's only one way to find out. Let's go." After a peaceful and stable trip, Skipper Bill anchored the ship about 2 kilometers away from the object, after which a meeting was called on the ship's deck to explain what would happen next. Following the meeting, Chase and the five, Skallow and Joe and friends, changed into their suits. Dr. Atlas, Henry, and Walton then fitted the trackers into each one of their suits, the trackers that would be used to keep a watchful eye on the six as they journeyed towards the object. When the trackers were all attached and ready to go, the doctors and Skipper Bill, along with members of the skipper's crew, went and took their post in the bridge, while Chase and the five lowered themselves into an inflatable dive boat which was piloted by first mate Jim and anchored on the starboard side of the MS Vigil. On receiving the signal to proceed from the MS Vigil, the explorers eagerly sailed off to their destination. They had been travelling for a while and were starting to sight the object of interest when the boat suddenly started acting peculiar, swaying from side to side for a bit before stopping. "What was that?" cried Joe as he held on to the boat. "It was just the current," reassured Skallow. "That wasn't the current," interrupted first mate Jim. "I don't know what that was. I'm just glad it's over." Their boat pulled up about 100 metres from the object, and Chase repeated the instructions he spoke to them on the MS Vigil. After they understood, they all put on their helmets and attached their breathing apparatuses, with help from first mate Jim. When everyone and everything was ready to go, all six returned to the edge of the boat, where they were sitting before, and on Chase River's countdown, flipped back into the ocean below. Under the ocean, the six, especially Skallow, Joe, Major, Thomson, and the Bodyguard, were taking all the incredible scenery that was on display before, around, and behind them. Were creatures of all kinds swimming and crawling on the ground, many rock formations, and several types of coral and other ocean flora. "Wow," cried Joe. "This is amazing," joined Thomson. "I've never seen anything like this before," added Skallow. "Beautiful," exclaimed Major Nick. "Nature at its best," uttered the Bodyguard. "Enjoy the views, but don't forget we have a mission to complete. Focus on that too," advised Chase Rivers. "Right, will do," responded Major Nick. "Agreed," responded the rest. While travelling towards the object of interest, Rivers was informed by those on the surface that their radar was playing up the closer they got to the object. They also informed him that this behaviour was not normal, and he and the others should take precautions. Taking precautions, the six continued their route toward the object, and the MS Vigil's radar continued to play up, getting worse and worse the closer they got. When they arrived at their location, Atlas and the other experts had decoded. They were presented not with a solid structure like the initial pictures showed, but with a large bright white light that seemed to stretch across the whole ocean floor. This light uncontrollably drew them in closer and closer until it consumed them. One by one, each one of them opened their eyes to vertical steel bars and dirty cream-coloured mossy limestone walls. Their hands, but not their feet, were chained to the back wall, and at some point all their gear was removed from them, leaving them only in their wetsuits. "Where are we?" Joe asked, coming to his senses. "I think we are in prison," replied Chase Rivers, he too coming to his senses. "And we are able to breathe without our suits, so there must be sufficient oxygen here." "How did we get here, and where is our stuff?" questioned Thomson. As soon as Thomson said this, the six heard footsteps coming down the stairs. "No idea," answered Major Nick, "but I think we're about to find out." What appeared before them were 12 soldiers dressed like the Hosseps of old. However, instead of their armour being made of bronze, it was instead made of many diverse types of shells. Their under armour, instead of being made of cloth, was made of seaweed. All 12 were carrying spears made of bronze with diamond tips. These soldiers marched into the cell and handcuffed the six with their hands behind their backs, with smaller versions of the chains they were bound in before, and holding them two for each, dragged them up the stairs where the soldiers had entered from. They were brought to what looked like a throne room, yet they weren't sure, as it wasn't very impressive to look at. There was no gold, jewels, or fabrics, but was a 3x3 room made of marble and painted Tyrian purple. The Tyrian purple walls were decorated with an elaborate diamond design that was slightly protruding out of the walls. It was also made of wood and painted Bazarian purple. The walls were also decorated with a pansy purple wooden trim, about a metre tall, protruding slightly more than the diamond design, and was located on both the tops and the bottoms of the walls, with the trim separated a couple of centimetres from the trim's edge. In the bottom corner on the left wall, and on the right top corner, were doors, not very impressive doors, but ones that looked like those Skallow, Joe, the McLeans, and Chase Rivers had in their homes. Against the back wall, and in the centre, was the throne, The throne itself, like everything else, was unimpressive. It resembled an armchair, however, was constructed of white marble instead, and with a Tyrian cushion on its seat. Also along the back wall and along the front wall were a line of fancy white marble benches. The floor was made of the same white marble as the throne and benches. In the throne room, the 12 soldiers forced Skallow, Joe, the McLeans, and Chase Rivers to drop to their knees, after which the soldiers loudly announced, "The Honourable King Murtoch III," before standing to attention. Subsequently, 6 individuals entered and took their places on the benches next to the throne, all officials still standing. Then Murtoch III entered and all bowed before him, except for Skallow, Joe, the McLeans, and Chase Rivers. Then Murtoch sat on his throne. Once seated, he announced, "Continue." The 6 next to him sat down, and the 12 soldiers stood at ease. Murtoch III was dressed like the soldiers that brought Skallow, Joe, and company, except his was more glamorous, but not by much. Unlike the soldiers, Murtoch wore a cape made of seaweed, and instead of a battle helmet wore a crown made of many shells, all of distinct kinds. Murtoch also carried a scepter made of bronze with a claw at the top. In between the claw was a sundial shell. Murtoch III addressed the 6, Skallow, Joe, the McLeans, and Chase Rivers, barking, "How dare you not bow before the king, Anapopians?" meaning unwanted people, and was what those in Chiospóli unfavourably called those from Town City. "What is your business in Chiospóli?" Chase Rivers humbly responded, "Forgive us, Murtoch, but we were just in awe at your beautiful kingdom. We, like you say, are outsiders, Anapopians, from the land of Opportun Civitas, what Town City was called in the days of Chiospóli, and we come in peace. We come to your great kingdom, Murtoch, to study and learn of your land and people, because we and those on the mainland, Opportun Civitas, want to understand you and your people, and to marvel at your great kingdom and land." The 6 sitting on either side of the king and the 12 soldiers discussed Rivers' response among each other, and Murtoch thought it over and laughed. "Well spoken for an Anapopian," mocked Murtoch. "It is nice to see you lot finally see things our way." The 6 on trial looked at each other puzzled. "What is he talking about?" each thought to themselves. "Don't play dumb with me," barked Murtoch to the 6 on trial. "You Anapopians constantly mistreat us without reason, insulting us, beating us, even killing us. We left you alone. We sunk our entire city to stop your harassment. Leave us alone. But you couldn't do that. You came to us instead. You Anapopians can't even respect the treaty our and your people made together." Skallow, Joe, and company looked at each other, confused and a little scared. Murtoch cleared his throat, then continued. It states, "From the year 2096, the people of Opportun Civitas and the people of Chiospóli are to remain apart. No man or woman from each tribe is to enter into the other's territory without direct permission from the ruler of that state. Anyone who violates this decree is to be put to death in a manner to be decided by the ruler in question." Skallow, Joe, and friends looked at each other confused and now more scared. Following Murtoch III's speech, one of the 6 members of the Particans, a woman named Satra, owner of the small general store on the corner of the main street, and a highly respected yet lowly citizen, stood up. "If I may speak, Murtoch," she requested. "You may," he answered. "I and the Partagoans seated here believe you should show lenience to these intruders, as they have spoken good of you. We suggest that you have these 6 spend the remainder of their days in the cell where they were before, instead of hanging them like those on the other side have done to those who violate this decree," declared Satra. Murtoch III rubbed his chin and began to smile. He then stood up to pass sentence. Lifting his scepter, Murtoch opened his mouth to speak, but was stopped by Joe, who spoke and said, "It's not the 21st century BC anymore, it's the 21st century AD. That treaty was made over 4,000 years ago, and things have changed a lot since then. The Anapopians, as you call us, don't think this way anymore, nor will we harm anyone from Chiospóli. Everyone in Opportun Civitas and around the world are fascinated with you and your people, your customs and your kingdom, and are excited to see what we will bring back. If you don't believe us, come back with us and see for yourselves," the bodyguard interrupted under his breath. Skallow, Joe, Majornick, Thomson, and Chase Rivers all became very afraid after the bodyguard said this, worried as to what Murtoch would do next. However, Murtoch, the members of the Paragos, and the 12 guards agreed to take the bodyguard on his suggestion, with Murntagh stating, "I personally, Murntagh III, will return with you six to Oppiton Civitas, and see for myself as to what you say about the mainland is true. If it is, you will go free. If not, then you will spend the rest of your days in prison." Skallow, Joe and company agreed to Murntagh III's proposition and returned to the MS Vigil in Murtagh's chariot. Back at the MS Vigil, the radar was showing a massive object approaching the boat. Dr. Atlas contacted Rivers saying, "Is this object we're picking up connected to you?" "Yes," replied Chase Rivers. "We'll explain it to you when we arrive." Murtagh's chariot emerged from the ocean to the surprise of all those on board the MS Vigil. His chariot parked up on the port side, and all six and Murntagh walked onto the MS Vigil's deck. Dr. Atlas, Henry and Walton, and Skipper Bill and First Mate Jim, and the members of the crew were taken aback when Murntagh stepped foot on deck. "Is this the King of Chiospóli, Murntagh?" nervously asked Dr. Henry. "Murntagh III," Murntagh proudly announced to all. Then all on board bowed before him except Skallow, Joe and company, to the surprise of Murntagh. "Your Majesty, would you be willing to return with us to Oppiton Civitas and inform us all on your kingdom, Chiospóli?" requested Dr. Atlas, coming to her feet, along with all on board. "Sure," accepted Murntagh, astonished. On the mainland, the explorers were welcomed warmly by John Ernest, members of the press and public, who all bowed to the ground when they were introduced to Murntagh, like those on the MS Vigil. Murntagh turned to his paroled prisoners following this, saying, "I did not expect anything like this. Maybe the people of Oppiton Civitas have changed. However, I need to see more before I'm convinced. Let us continue." Before Murntagh and the others could leave Shore Cove docks, John Ernest approached them, asking as he bowed to the ground, "Your Majesty, would it please you to allow me to conduct an interview about you, your people, and Chiospóli? Does this Oppiton Civitan have good intentions, or is he here to mock me?" requested Murntagh the Chase Rivers, who was acting as Murntagh's advisor. "Like Joe said before, everyone in Oppiton Civitas and around the world are excited to see what we will bring back," advised Chase Rivers. "He's the one responsible for stirring up all the interest and is waiting to conclude his story in the best way possible." Murntagh liked Rivers' advice and agreed. He then explained to John Ernest the story between Town City and Chiospóli, from the perspective of him and the people of Chiospóli. Murntagh III's story left all who heard it in Town City and around the world with a deep sense of shame. Nobody had heard this side of the story before, only from the side of those of Town City at Murntagh's time. Following this, Murntagh spent a week in Town City looking around and making his decision on the fate of Skallow, Joe, Thomson, the Bodyguard, and Chase Rivers. After his week-long stay, Murntagh VI previously stated, along with the three doctors Atlas, Henry, and Walton, returned to Shore Cove docks, joined this time with the Mayor of Town City, Eric Aubrey, where Murntagh made his decision about the six. "You Oppiton Civitans have changed a lot," began Murntagh III. "Joe and Chase here have told me the truth, something I've never seen happen between an Oppiton Civitan and a Chiospólit in my lifetime," continued Murntagh. "This week gone has proved to me that it is finally time for both our peoples to reconcile our differences and make amends, starting with me releasing my prisoners and opening up Chiospóli's borders to all the people of Town City and those around the world too. In return, we want you to do the same for us," he concluded. Mayor Aubrey agreed and stretched out his hand to Murntagh. Murntagh nervously stretched out his hand, and both shook hands, with all present smiling as this took place. Following all this, a new treaty was drawn up and signed, on papyrus for Chiospóli and paper for Town City. Tourism was to be established as part of this new treaty, with 2 acrylic glass train tunnels between the two proposed. Murntagh also donated to Dr. Atlas and Town City's History Museum many artifacts gifted by the people of Chiospóli. Some skilled Chiospolites also came to help construct the Chiospóli exhibit with those from Town City. When the exhibit was completed, Skallow, Joe, Robo, Thomson, and the Bodyguard, with the 3 experts Atlas, Henry, and Walton, Skipper Bill and First Mate Jim, John Ernest, and other members of the press, and Mayor Aubrey, all were invited and attended the opening ceremony for the museum's newest exhibit. Murntagh III, Santra, and the other members of the Patagos, along with representatives from the Chiospóli press, were present also. Moontalk and Mayor Albury cut the ceremonial ribbon together, after which the media asked each for comment. "This is an event today 4,000 years in the making," proclaimed Mayor Albury. "This is a dark part of Town City and Chiospóli's history that has finally been brought to light and concluded," affirmed Moontalk. Both Mayor Albury and Moontalk finished their comments with, "This is the beginning of a new era for both Oppidan Civitas and Chiospóli, one that will last for all generations."